Good evening. Welcome to today's Law Awareness Week's CDC 2020, The Law and Me, Stronger Together. This is organized by Law Society Pro Bono Services and the 5 Community Development Councils, supported by People's Association, National University of Singapore Faculty of Law, Singapore Management University School of Law, Singapore University of Social Sciences, and Singapore Corporate Counsel Association. I am Christine, your host for today's webinar on family violence. With us today are our panelists, Ms. Dharma Jayaram and Ms. Adisti Jalani. Dharma is the Managing Director of Dharma Law LLC. Over the last 2 decades, she has gained legal experience in both the private and public sectors. Dharma's family law practice extends beyond litigation and mediation. She is a court-appointed parenting coordinator, family mediator, and sits on the Family Law Practicing Committee of the Singapore Law Society. Thank you, Dharma, for joining us this evening.
Thanks, Christine. Thanks for the welcome.
Adisti is the Principal Social Worker at PAVE. She heads PAVE's casework team and has more than a decade of experience as a practicing social worker. In the 11 years at PAVE, Adisti has engaged persons who abuse, survivors of violence, and children impacted by family violence, both at casework and group work level. She has also given talks and presentations on the topic of dating and domestic violence at local and overseas platforms. Welcome, Adisti, to this panel.
Thank you, Christine.
Now, just some housekeeping matters before we get started. The relevant materials for today's talk can be downloaded from the handout section, which you can see on your screen. If you are joining us from a mobile phone or tablet, the icon should appear on the top right-hand corner. On your computer, you should see the icons on the right. Please download these useful materials before the end of the talk. Feel free to ask questions during the webinar. You can send your questions through the sections panel and click send. Your questions will only be seen by the organizer. We will do our best to address them during the discussions or at the FAQ session at the end. Please note that our discussions today and materials provided in this webinar do not constitute professional legal advice. If you require specific legal advice, please consult a lawyer. Now let's get right into the discussion. And we begin with the basic question, what is family violence? Most people understand family violence to mean physical and verbal abuse, but the legal definition is in fact broader than these obvious forms of family violence. Dharma, could you shed some light, please, on what acts constitute family violence?
Sure, Christine. Thank you. So, just like the term says family violence, we're very specifically talking about violence within a family unit. And family unit, so we need to define what a family unit is or who are family members. So the Act actually defines that for us. It tells us that spouses, children, parents, siblings, in-laws, and relatives, wider family, are considered family members, but the courts are not so restrictive. If there is a former spouse or is a fiance or people who have been living in a certain environment for some time, they are willing to consider them as family. So there is also a catch-all phrase. So it depends on the circumstances how this person is associated with the family. If it's a non-family member, of course, there are harassment courts in the state courts to handle it, but family violence here would be in the family justice courts. So for that, this nexus must be first there with the parties. As for violence, like what you said, Christine, it's not just physical and verbal abuse. The courts have a very specific ways in which they see violence happening towards the victim. The law states that if you place or attempt to place a family member in fear of getting hurt, cause hurt to a family member, wrongfully confine or restrain a family member against his or her will, or continually harass a family member to cause anguish to him or her, then you have committed family violence.
And in all of these, is the intent of the abuser important?
Yes, the intent is very important. For example, if there are people who feel that they are trying to be protective of a particular family member, so they say they want to keep them in the room, and then I'm going to lock them, I'm taking the key away because I want you to be safe. So in their mind, they think that they're keeping that person in a safe environment. but that's causing the person who's in there. It could be a child, it could be a wife who feels trapped, that they are in this environment and they can't really come out or seek help. And it's so much, it's more the effect on that person that the intent is, you see. So it's not so much whether you intend in a bad way, but the effect is causing anguish, some kind of distress on the other person. So there are lots of people who will tell you that, oh, I didn't know that this is causing this person hurt, but ultimately family violence encapsulates the effect on the person as well. The courts are willing to see that. So sometimes people are very caustic, they're very desensitized to the language they use. They don't feel like, they think it's common because they use it all the time. But the person who's hearing it, it's degrading or it's hurtful to them, and they can't constantly keep hearing these kind of profanities or words like this. And so as much as intent is important, that they knowingly or but the idea is that they ought to know. A reasonable person ought to know that constant abuse of this nature can cause some kind of effect on that other person. So family violence is much broader than that. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. We have members who wonder, if there is simple corporal punishment, or if it's injuries inflicted in the course of self-defense, would those be considered as physical abuse? Or are there any exceptions where force on a family member is not considered as family violence?
Okay, so what we know as physical abuse are things like bruises or cut marks or hurt, and things like that are very clear, scratch marks and things like that, where people are purposely using force. But yeah, there are people who also, there are also family members who retaliate, who if they are provoked, they fight back, and they use they're actually defending themselves from a person who's trying to attack them. So if the defense is proportionate to the kind of violence that is placed on them, not like someone comes and touches you and then you jump on that person and start pummeling them for 5 minutes, like non-stop hitting them. I mean, that's not self-defense. That's also, you're retaliating with another kind of violence. So the court tends to look at the degree in which you are using whatever is around you to defend yourself. Now, self-defense is, as in law, we understand it to be something that you do immediately to protect yourself, right? So if you are given a time to cool down, right? Somebody has hurt you and you've gone to the room and you think about it and you're very upset and you come out and hit that person, then it's no more self-defense, because you actually have a cooling time and you're supposed to go and look for help. So though it's an exception, it is again very carefully used because it has to be in the heat of the moment, and then maybe it can be construed as a self-defense. Corporal punishment, yes, for under 21-year-olds. I mean, in Singapore, we're similar. In the Asian society, we still, hit our children or smack them if they're doing something wrong. But I guess if it's reasonable and responsibly done, then I guess that doesn't fall under family violence. You see, it's not. It crosses the line where it becomes abusive. The children cannot operate, or they are crippled by the entire experience. They're crying. There's blood coming out, or there's very strong bruises that they can't sit down anymore because they're beaten on the bum too much, or things like that. Then yeah, I guess it's no more simplistic punishment. The court doesn't see this, that it can be construed as family violence. And of course, again, for corporal punishment, it's simple things like using the hand or a cane, not anything you find in your hand. Take your phone and hit the head and all. I guess that will not be excused, or it won't fall under the exceptions. Yeah.
Thank you, Dharma. It is, of course, equally important to examine family violence from a sociological perspective, so we understand the trends and impacts of this phenomenon. Adisti, could you share with us, please, what family violence looks like from your experience and the cases that you have handled? Also, from a psychological perspective, why should these kinds of abuses not be ignored?
Right. Thanks, Christine. Well, I think first and foremost, usually when we think about violence, most likely people would think about physical violence because it's probably the most obvious type of abuse that a lot of us may know. So this involves really the using of hands, using of legs, using of weapons to inflict harm. And it's very much easy for one to identify physical violence because you can see it. It's very visible, perhaps redness on the skin, there's bruises, or even in worse situations, there's injuries. Yeah. However, one thing that we want to point out here is that violence doesn't just happen. So we can see that it may start off with verbal abuse to physical abuse, like for example, the slapping, the pushing, pulling, to more severe abuse like punching, hitting with an object, dragging a person by the hair, as well as strangulation. I just want to make a point on strangulation as well, because if someone actually strangles another person, he or she is literally a breath away from death. So that's why it's so important that we don't downplay the seriousness of family violence, because it can be a matter of life and death.
Yes, and from your personal encounters with victims of such abuse, are there any trends or characteristics that are common to these households?
Yeah, I think when it comes to verbal and emotional abuse, one thing for sure is that it may not be so obvious. A lot of people may not know this as much as they know about physical violence, but it can damage a person just as much, if not more. Yeah, and if I can share a case that I had the privilege to work with, this was a client. She's a professional. She works and earns well, but one day she had just called us up, and she just wanted to find out whether what she was going through with her husband was abuse. But at that time, she wasn't quite ready to share a lot, except to find out what were her options in seeking help. Yeah, and shortly after that, she was referred to us via the courts for mandatory counseling, because she had applied for and obtained a personal protection order against her husband. And this time, the husband actually punched her in her face and threw a book at her. Yeah, and so when we finally got around to just taking stock of her experiences over the many years of her marriage, we realized why it took her so long before she got help. Because throughout her life with him, she truly believed that she deserved the violence by her husband. And reason for that was really because her husband had abused her so much so that she had lost all sense of self-worth, lost all sense of confidence, and he had criticized her basically on everything. So from her not looking attractive, from her not able to cook well, not earning enough, even things like not pleasing him sexually, he would blame her for that. And when the children came, he discredited her even more, because he saw that she also failed as a mom and called her really horrible like bad words in front of the children, and even got the kids to call her bad names. Yeah, which eventually he really completely undermined her authority, so she didn't even believe that she could parent her children. Yeah, so in this situation, it really affected her in all aspects of her life, including her job. Yeah, so remember that she was, she is in a position at work where she's leading people, she's doing well, but she felt like, she really internalized the messages that she wasn't good enough. And eventually, the turning point was when she realized, yeah, she was sinking into something quite destructive. She just couldn't get up. She couldn't bring herself to leave home. She couldn't face the world. And it took a toll, not just on her mind. Yeah, so this is how the effect of emotional and verbal abuse can be, not just her mind, not just her emotions, but also just her overall health. Yeah, so it took a while, but she finally realized she doesn't deserve this abuse by her husband.
Thank you, Honesty. Earlier, just moving on to the unexpected victims of family violence. Dharma had identified some groups of people which law regards as family members for the purposes of family violence. But from your point of view, sociological point of view, are there any groups of people we wouldn't expect to be victims of family violence?
Yes, I think definitely there are some populations that we worry as well, especially in Singapore, where we often hear about like things like filial piety. So it's pretty hard to imagine that our elderly would be victims of family violence, as well as other vulnerable members of society, such as those with mental or physical disabilities. Yeah, so these are groups of people that sometimes they may not be seen, but they are just as vulnerable, and that we need to pay attention to that. There's also often myth about violence that only happens to women. While it's really true, actually a great majority of victims of family violence all over the world, more than 90% are women. Men or even boys actually can be abused as well. So something for us to also remember.
Thank you. And we move on now to the next piece of the puzzle. We know that each family is different, and that to understand why family violence occurs or recurs, we first need to understand the familial relationships and the dynamics in each family. Adisti, can you share with us what are some concerns that family violence survivors you have worked with have? What causes them to tolerate abuse? What holds them back from seeking help?
Yeah. It's usually the perennial question, right? When people think about those who experience family violence, I think the question is, why is it so difficult? Why is it that, these victims or the survivors don't just leave the relationship or do something about it? It's as easy as probably just opening the door and just stepping out. Yeah, but truly, I think from our experience, and from the experiences of our clients, we know that survivors in action, that means them not doing anything, is really the survivors in action. They are doing something about it. What are they doing? They are actually considering many, many, many things before they feel safe enough and actually ready to get help. So there are many reasons why they do so. I think first and foremost, if we think about or know about the dynamics of family violence, it's really such that a person isn't 24/7, 365 days violent. Okay, so violence often follows in a cycle, and there are periods of times that things are good, things are peaceful, and the perpetrators are actually nice. So, for a victim or for a survivor, they may think that, maybe I can hold on to this hope, right, that he or she will actually change. But what happens is that, if nothing happens at that time, it's followed back again by tension in the family, and then again, violence happens once more. So once violence starts, it doesn't stop, and the cycle actually just gets shorter and shorter, and each time it just gets worse. Yeah. So the other reason is also fear, which a lot of us may not know or understand very much, or understand fully how the experiences are for those who are experiencing violence themselves. Yeah. So they know, how safe it is or how dangerous the person in their family may be, and they often worry about what may happen to them if they don't seek help, or rather if they seek help or if they leave this relationship, will it actually get worse? Yeah, so some of our clients, they have had the experience in which where they left home and then only to be brought back, home and get it worse this time round. So eventually the effect of the abuse is that they are left feeling very much helpless. They felt very much hopeless in this situation. They think that perhaps there isn't really any help out for me, out there lah. Yeah, and sometimes it's also just really practical considerations, because if you think about it, this is a person that you depend on, or this is a person that you have loved for all your life, right? Leaving him or her may not necessarily be the answer. So there's a lot of uncertainty about what will happen to them, what will happen to their children, will they survive? basically. So a lot of things that survivors actually consider and think about before they decide to do something about it.
Hmm. Thank you, Adisti. I think that, what you've shared, what makes people fearful of seeking help, I'm sure, Dharma, in your practice, in your clients, you have heard similar stories. Would you be able to share with us the journeys that your clients have undertaken before they reach out to you for representation?
Yeah, sure. The some like what Adisti mentioned just now, that what we normally think when it comes to family violence are normally women, and women, if they don't take the step forward because they're either um, their moms have been abused, sometimes they turn to their own family women, and the women are saying this is normal, it's okay, my husband also hit me. So when they say things but as we grow, and we move into different generations, I've seen a trend where I've had children bringing their moms or their dads to see me about violence, you see. So, and when I say children, means they're much older, they're about 17, 18. When we were in school, or for previous generations, we don't really talk about these kind of things. But nowadays in schools, they do talk about empowerment, stepping forward, having moral courage to do things. And when these kind of signals are happening, or there's more awareness about these kind of domestic issues and all that in school, where there's more dialogue about it, children come home and then they look at their mom or dad being abused, or their grandparents, and they want to do something about it. So I know I recently had a pair of sisters who brought their mother and say, what, well, we're getting married soon, my sister first, and then, but I can't imagine my mom staying in that house. She's surviving because we're there. So we want her to get a divorce, because my dad abuses her a lot, and things like that. So they they are the ones who are feeling empowered. Of course, when I talk to the mom, she's like, I'm used to this. It's okay. At the end of the day, he loves me, he hates me. I mean, I'm just in this pattern or this cycle, and they don't want to come out of it. And it's quite hard to help people if they don't want to. Like she says, inaction about it. But having said that, the unexpected victims are your children. Sometimes you have to do what you need to do so that your children don't fall into that pattern. That if they are being abused in their future relationships, they don't develop unhealthy relationships with people around them. So this is something I find interesting. And yes, definitely men or husbands who come forward, they find it so embarrassing to even open up and talk to another person. I had a male client who came and saw me, and he said he went to see another lawyer, and the male lawyer who was telling him, like, come on, like, it's okay, we just have to be strong, hit her back, or like, talk to her about it, or and then he decided to come to a female lawyer after that to hopefully see a different perspective of what's going on. And then I told him, you have to get the help that you need. um, Even parents who are being abused, I'm sure that there's a maintenance for tribunal for parents, right? So if parents are not getting any support from their children, they're allowed to go there. But I know people who want to go there, but they feel like they should get a PPO before they go there, so that they are protected. Because if they bring their child to the tribunal to ask for maintenance, they're worried that they come back home and they'll be beaten. So the one social worker brought this person to me to say, can we get a PPO first, so that he can ask for some maintenance, so that he can go and survive elsewhere himself, because he's scared to live with his son. They were trying to find solutions like this outside. And I mean, it is sad, but these are quite realistic things that are happening in our society now. Yeah.
Thank you, Dharma. Actually,
Sure.
what you have shared ties in nicely with our next point, which is when survivors of abuse are ready to take steps to protect
Right.
themselves, what sort of protection is available and how do they obtain such protection? Perhaps we can hear
Okay.
from you first, Dharma.
Sure. What is interesting now is that the courts are working very closely with social workers. There's counseling units and all that. So first thing I want to let people know, it's not a very punitive court system when you reach for help. It's not like if someone hits you, the court is going to pull that person aside and berate him or scold him or give him a fine or something. It's really a center for help. It's where we are trying to manage the violence that is happening in your life. So the courts are now becoming quite holistic in their whole approach. At every PPO mention or every PPO case that comes before them, counseling is mandated for family members, and there's always a review later on. I'm just want to set the stage for what I'm going to say next. So definitely, if you feel that there's some kind of violence, it's good to make a police report for a start. But the police also don't necessarily come forward to help unless it's a very obvious case of violence. So they would recommend that you do get a PPO or something for a start, you see. So making the report will at least help you put together the thoughts of what exactly the incident is. Because when it comes to court, it's still an evidentiary burden that you have to discharge by explaining what exactly the violent act is, when did it happen, and all that. So when you go to the police station, at least you can write it out very neatly, and you've because sometimes to relive that thing every time someone asks you is very hard. So to take that step to go to the police and commit it, commit down what you have gone through is a good step. If there's more than one incident, even if you're making the report at the third incident, go ahead, put the first and second one down so that it's there, like, and it helps the lawyer. So you don't have to repeat it to the police, repeat it to the lawyer, repeat it to the social worker. So it's in one place for them to read. And then once you have that and you want to take out a PPO, please go to the Family Justice Court. And if they find that you are in sufficient danger at this point, because once you file for a PPO, within a day or two, the court mentioned date will be served on the other party to come to court. So you might be frightened to go back home. So what the court does, it gives you an EO, an expedited order. Now, an expedited order is not the final PPO. It's not the final personal protection order. It's an interim kind of order that keeps you safe. When I say keeps you safe, means it's a paper that if someone breaches it and tries to harm you, I mean the person that you're talking about, like the person you're planning to serve the PPO slip on, then the police can come and assist you at that time. So the EO lasts for 28 days. So normally the first mention will be one of the days in that 28 days. And after that, there will be a few rounds of mentions and then a hearing. And sometimes at the first mention, when the other party comes, counseling is instituted immediately to see whether parties will agree or disagree, and then move from there. So there is a multi-layered or multi-pronged approach taken. So it's not so punitive from the start. The court does want to sometimes unpack the problem, and even if a PPO is given, someone says, "Yeah, I beat the person. Give me a PPO. It's okay. I don't care." The court will still mandate counseling and ask parties to come back for a review session a few months later. And that's what's great about the family courts now, because they do take this kind of a multi-level approach to the whole thing. Because like what Adisti mentioned, there is other issues underlying the violence in that family. Maybe a perception of male dominance, or a perception of subservience, or perception of desensitization, or whatever. So they go through what they need to go through. So the courts help them like that. And if you're a child, definitely an adult has to help you apply for the PPO. And if the violence is very great, like someone is literally storming around the house, pulling things off the shelf, throwing at things, and just creating much of ruckus, there's also this thing called a domestic exclusion order, where you can either exclude the person from most parts of the house, or one part of the house, or the entire house if they make it unlivable. Like I shared with an earlier client the other day, this client shared with me that this gentleman, and they've divorced for a couple of years now, and her husband refuses to sell the house. So, and he makes it very hard to sell the house, and he starts hoarding the house. He starts putting many things around the house, and he makes it very difficult to sell this particular property. And eventually the wife, though she had a PPO, she had to go and take out a domestic exclusion order to get him out of the house, and that's a kind of violence as well, because you have no space. It becomes inhabitable. You're not allowed to stay there. You don't have that. So it's a kind of a mental torture for her as well, that she can't move on. And because the house is like that, she has children and grandchildren, and the families don't want to bring the children over because the house is so dirty and messy, and things like that. So it's important that first of all we know there is help out there, and that there are legal processes in place to recognize this kind of situations that you are in, and to, of course, step forward and get that help. And I think seminars like this, or talks and all, are important for us to keep attending, and keeping ourselves informed, so that when we do see people in these kind of situations, we can tell them, hey, I think later on you will be sharing some helplines and all that for people. Yeah, so that's great. Yeah.
Before we move on, we have a question from a member of the audience. How long is the order? How long are the orders for? Whether they are the DEOs or the PPOs?
Okay, normally a PPO now doesn't really have a timeline to it. It's indefinite. Okay, depending on the now if it's over a child, it is until the child is 18 or 21. You know, and sometimes and if there is no more contact between the parties, remember, but PPO is basically an order that says do not commit violence against this person. It's not an order that punishes you for your past acts. The past acts are there to establish why you need a PPO. So once you have a PPO and then it just says from now on you're not supposed to commit. So based on the gravity of the incidents, the court tends to look at how long would this person need a PPO. If it's an older person, they may leave the PPO indefinitely. If it's a younger person or parties are going to get divorced soon, sometimes the court can order for the PPO to be for the next 2 years or PPO for the next 24 months or 6 months. There have ever been timelines like that. So as not to cause too much prejudice, especially because post the divorce, we still want the father to have some access to the child or the mother to have some access to the child, depending on who is the one who's committed violence. And putting a PPO may sometimes dampen any effort for the parent to continue having any healthy relationship with the children past that time. PPOs can also be revoked, as in if you are away from that party, that means you are the person a PPO is against, but you no longer see that party for a couple of years, you can step forward to court and ask for that PPO to be rescinded or revoked because you just don't like such a record over your head. You don't think it's good. So these are the different ways. So there can be timeline, but it's normally up to the court. It's not something that we request. You see, it's based on the gravity of the incidents that have happened.
And what happens if the perpetrator continues to inflict violence after a PPO is granted? What happens then?
Okay, so a PPO is basically a court order telling you not to commit violence on that person. So if you commit the violence after getting the order, it's considered a breach of a court order. A breach of a court order is a very serious matter. You see, so the police can arrest you. So of course, if there's any violence committed on you, you have to call the police. You have to have your PPO at hand, so that you can show that to the police. So making a couple of copies, keeping it at different places in the house is important. I remember this client who was quite smart. When she received the PPO, she did, after the hearing, she went to the police post near her house to let the police station know that I've been granted the PPO. I'm going home now. I'm living with him. So, if I do call today, tomorrow, she just wants to let them know that she may need to activate. And I thought it was quite interesting because they took note of her request, and then of course a couple of days later the gentleman did lose his mind and she called the police and they did attend to her quite quickly because she had already told them. Yeah.
We have an audience member who is asking, during the COVID period, will the police turn up at her home if she reports physical abuse or family violence?
Yes, I think that when it comes, these are very, I think Aditi will share. During the COVID period, I think social workers were working harder than anybody else because when it comes to matters of life, death, harm of this kind of nature, even the courts remain open. Even the courts are willing to quickly settle all these kind of things because these things don't take a break from the virus lah, because unfortunately or fortunately the lockdown actually created sorry, I shouldn't use the word lockdown. The circuit breaker actually created more opportunities for violence to be displayed by certain family members. And I think when school reopened, these surfaced because when the kids started coming back to school, you could see the bruises on them, the marks on them, because they were in tight confined environments with parents, and maybe parents are going through their own stress or things like that. So definitely the police, social workers, all are at hand. I mean, I got a couple of calls during the circuit breaker period myself, and I realized that the courts are very open to dealing with these matters at that time. So
exactly.
no,
I think during that time, during the circuit breaker, I think again, like what Dharma says, because this is a matter of life and death, and sometimes we know that when violence happens, when it doesn't stop, things may really escalate very quickly. So there is a need for help to be given and rendered very quickly. I think even during the circuit breaker, for us social workers, we do go down and also strategize with police, for example, in order to help our clients. And I just want to make a point as well as to what Dharma mentioned about the PPO and how it has been really helpful. I think especially so when it's coupled with the counseling order. So social workers really like the counseling order very much because it gives that
Yeah.
opportunity to engage the perpetrators. I think this is a group of people that sometimes we may also overlook, but they are very important because it's after all their hands, their legs, violence, and they need help as well. So
Yeah.
with the application of PPO, it really serves as a good deterrence for the perpetrators because now, it's somewhat like a reminder and a consequence to their behaviors because otherwise things just happen behind closed doors. Nobody knows about it. But when the PPO is there and when the CGO is in place, the counseling order is in place and they are referred for help, it gives us the opportunity to really work with them and challenge them on some of these beliefs that maintain those behaviors, those abusive behaviors. And for some of them, actually, they really want to change. They really have that motivation because they do see the impact, the extent of the violence, how it's affecting their families, especially so their children, and even themselves. They're not doing very good themselves and they needed help. Yeah, so it really is something that we really like a lot. Although
Yeah.
we know that the journey to apply the PPO, although what Dharma mentioned, it's pretty straightforward, it's pretty simple, but it's not so simple for a lot of our clients out there.
Correct. It's in the application because if it goes to trial, they do go on the stand, they have to give witness, and sometimes they're not able to face the perpetrator. And I just tagging on Adisti's point, many of the perpetrators may need help. They could be going through their own mental issues or other things like that. So what we imagine a perpetrator to be is like this villainous person trying to beat up somebody else or overbearing and power. But no, they could be coming from their own insecurities. They could be depression. It could be some other clinical condition they have, like bipolar or something. But we don't know, and they're not treated for all this kind of help. And then they are taking it out. And then what we just see is a violent act. We just see this violence, and then we see a perpetrator and a victim. But like they say, the CGO and all that, sometimes we are able to unpack more than that,
Yes.
and get to the root of the problem. So taking that step forward is important, whether it's a social worker or even going to court or even talking to lawyers. And I want to just say that the family lawyers are actually quite well trained. We do attend a lot of talks and all that, and family lawyers in general, they don't just leap at the opportunity of taking out an application in court. They also want to see how best we can do this so that put the necessary help in place for our clients also before we move forward on such a case, to not unpack it, to talk it out and see what are the options. So do feel free to also seek legal counsel, just like you would turn to a social worker. There are even social workers and lawyers who work together very closely to see how best we can create a holistic solution to this, because it's more than just, I mean, we don't like turning a family problem into a legal problem. Ultimately, it's still a family problem. And how do we help them solve it? Legal tools are just there to keep you safe while you address the family problems and get better. Yeah.
Yes, and I think this is a timely actually for us to move on into seeking help. For those who are
Yeah.
out there looking for help, what kinds of help are available? Perhaps we can start with you, Adisti, from the social support front.
Yeah, so I think I would want to encourage basically those who are possibly experiencing violence or even know people who do to approach specialized family violence agencies such as PAVE. So PAVE for us, we are an integrated service for individual and family protection. So essentially we deal with both family violence as well as child protection issues. There are other family violence specialist centers out there, like Transafe in the east side, that's in Bedok. There's Project Start Care Corner in the West. And then there are also child protection specialist centers in the community, like Hearts at Fayette, that's Big Love, and also the Child Protective Services. That's the one that holds the statutory power, who also looks after the safety and well-being of children in Singapore. So we can always look them up online, and if not, also to approach the many family service centers that's across the island. Yeah, so in every neighborhood, we have family service centers that's available. Sometimes they may not know where to start, so that could be a good place to begin to talk through about the experiences and perhaps explore some options as to what's available for them in terms of help.
Thank you. Dharma, we have questions coming in. What should a survivor do on his or her own after suffering abuse? You earlier explained that a people application, you need to file a police report, a medical report. Do you need to wait until these are ready before applying for a PPO?
No, it's not necessary for you to wait, but definitely if you are harmed, it is important to get medical help first, not really run to the court first. Get that medical help first, because I know parties who are sometimes very hurt and bruised at that time. So this particular lady, she used to take pictures of her bruises and send to her daughter. So that was an amazing record that was kept. You see, those she didn't know how to, she took pictures, and these were helpful later on in the trial. So things like this, just documenting the abuse instead of just covering it up. So if you just send it to your daughter, or just taking your own pictures and keeping it in your phone, or making a police report, or seeing a doctor, talking to the doctor, getting a referral to a psychologist, these are all things that you can do to help yourself if you don't want to come forward to make an issue of it. So you see your ability, and these people will tell you, hey, I think you should do something, I think you should get a, because you're constantly coming here for this. I mean, doctors will say so and so is bruised, or so and so is hurt. They're not going to say so and so was beaten by so and so. They cannot say that because they were not there to witness it, but at least they can see that you're being harmed, and they may be able to. So by constantly engaging public instead of hiding away, that's definitely something that you must do. So seeking that kind of help. Having said that, we also had students who were self-harming, and who do they share this with? They normally share it with their friends. So friends can also be vigilant. We've had cases where friends have stepped forward talking to their parents, and then their parents have come forward to find the correct help for the children in the school, because there's some kind of harm going on in school. I think ultimately, as a society, we should have some kind of moral courage. I know sometimes we think it's not our problem. We shouldn't interfere if someone is going through something, but we've heard, how people who suffer tend to be over happy, extra indulgent in social activities and things like that. But if you do sense your friends or people are having some kind of problems, talk to them. And I think a very interesting way to talk to them is to even share about how you feel about this kind of things, or your own personal experience, and that may help the other person open up and share, because people may still be quite shy to do this kind of thing. So definitely finding some outlet. I know running to the court is not the first thing that comes to people's mind, but I'm just saying that there are so many other ways in which we can try to reach out to people, or even ourselves, if we're victims, to reach out to just someone. I'm sure if if a friend gets a picture of your bruise, they will ask, hey, what's this? Why are you sending this to me? So if you're scared to start talking, maybe something like that will help you break the ice.
But Dharma, what about the violence that is not visible? I mean, we have a question coming in for verbal violence. Does that qualify as family violence? How do you document this?
Okay, that's continual harassment. Okay, so definitely sometimes you may have to record what's going on. That means as the person is scolding you, you record it. In one particular instance, we had a child who recorded the father scolding the mother over a period of time. And eventually, not that the mother asked the child to do it, the child just recorded it, to hoping that the mother will be able to use it. When I say the child, means it's not a baby, but 16, 17-year-old boy. And he says, Mom, I've got all the recordings. He calls you every single day. Can you go do something about it? And those recordings were so useful. I mean, she had to spend a couple of $100 to do the transcript. But the court saw the continual verbal harassment. you know.
Mm.
So evidence of this nature is important, but like I said, you don't have to worry about the evidence only. Definitely a continual harassment has an effect on you. Some women, if they have a lot of MCs, they're unable to go to work because they're feeling very down, they have low self-esteem, or they are hurt, they keep changing jobs. These are all patterns that sometimes you may have to raise inside your affidavit when you're going to court to show the effect it has had on you. You know, I stopped going to my mom's house because my husband keeps scolding me in front of her, you know, things like this. So um, or even when kids are a bit older, they can always come forward, or even a neighbor that you know, you see, can come forward. But definitely, uh, harassment of a continual nature can be documented in some form, especially if that person is just used to doing this kind of thing, abusing you,
Mm.
and then you can bring that forward. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a participant who is concerned about affording representation. The
Sure.
question is, I do not know how to write the statement of evidence and affidavit for submission to court. For the PPO case, who can I turn to? Do I need to engage a lawyer? What if I don't have the necessary resources for legal fees? Maybe you could
Okay.
just have a
Uh,
answer, a
sure.
brief answer.
There is yeah, there's Legal Aid Bureau. You know, they could turn to Legal Aid Bureau. There are a lot of on-site clinics around. You know, I think in certain Meet the People session, they do have legal clinics. I think the CDCs have. I know the state courts itself has a legal clinic, and the family courts has a family clinic, legal clinic. And these legal clinics are free. So this is a place to go where there are family lawyers sitting there, or you know, and they can give you a guide. You know, if you've already started writing something, maybe they can help you put it
Mm.
together if you want to represent yourself. You know, but if you want legal representation, definitely there is I know Legal Aid Bureau does family law, so you can always approach them for
Thank you.
representation. Yeah.
Yeah, and our
And
experience also, if I can just add on as well, is that I think the courts have made it also easy for people to actually know about the PPO and also apply online for themselves. Like what Dharma says, you know, if you need the legal representation, then there are resources and help as well. But for those people who, you know, if you are able to do it yourself as well, I think the Family Justice Court has also developed the system. It's called the IFAMS, yeah. So in which you can actually log in using your SingPass, and then to fill up the form itself, yeah. Which essentially it's really asking about what Dharma has mentioned, the incident that is most concerning, the most recent incident that has happened, what is the violence
Correct.
that has happened, and also the history of violence. So
mm,
that's a start. I think for some people who can do that, they can do it themselves. But of course, those who need the legal representation would go and seek support in
Yeah.
that aspect.
Yeah.
thank you,
It's also
Hadisti.
important to note. Sorry. It's also important to note that people who really need help then come forward. You know, that people should not abuse the system. You know, if some women can get some support, they have left the house, because the court looks at one of the elements that they look at when giving a PPO is the necessity. Do I need to give a PPO? If you've now moved out of the house, you're no more in contact with the perpetrator. Do you need the PPO? You are now in a safe place. You're not planning to meet him again. You're going to file for divorce. You know, there are no children in the marriage. So why do you need a PPO? So I mean, I appeal to people, you know, social workers, and all, when someone is not in that need of it, sometimes these kind of cases, uh, for want of a better word, clog the system, so that the real people who need help cannot be addressed earlier. You see, so we
Mm.
shouldn't abuse this, because this is really for those that need that kind of support and protection. Yeah.
Thank you. Hadisti, are there any walk-in shelters that offer immediate housing assistance to victims of family violence?
Yeah, so I think that's a good question, because especially in situations where, you know, it's really high risk and a person may need to leave the homes, and they may not have anywhere to go. So where can they go, right? In Singapore, there are shelters for families, including for children as well. And usually what happens is that for the admission to the shelters, it is usually also by recommendation by the social workers. So meaning that if they had approached any of the social service agencies and they have been assessed to be suitable for to go into the shelters, then they would do so. But usually one of the things that we want to also do first is really to assess what kinds of social support do they have. Meaning that, you know, within their own networks of support, it could be family members, it could be friends as well. And sometimes this is the opportunity for us to link back, you know, some of these individuals back to the families who may, number one, not know about the violence that had happened before, or number two, they may not know the extent that maybe this family member of theirs have been going through. And three, really, you know, tapping on the strength of their own networks, who can also continue to keep them safe as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, yes, to answer the question, there are all these shelters. The addresses are confidential. I think simply because, you know, we don't want people to actually know and track them down. And so these places are available, but with the assessment by the social workers.
Thank you both. We can now move on to how we can help survivors of abuse. Aditi, I think this question is for you. How do we approach them with sensitivity?
Yeah, I think, you know, this is where sometimes we have had, I think in our experience, family members or friends who've actually called us, you know, because they are very much worried about someone that they know experiencing family violence. Like we said, you know, sometimes it's not very easy for someone to actually come forward. It is still very much so considered as a stigma or something bad to be sharing about, you know, the issue of family violence to just about anyone. So if, let's say, ever we've come across someone who is experiencing violence, I think the first thing that a person could do is really to listen, right? Very lightly. Okay, it takes a lot of courage for someone to even just be opening up to you and telling you about their family violence experience. And most times, from what we know, is that this is usually not the first time that they're telling, or rather, this is not the first experience of violence that they are sharing with you. They may have tried many different things. They may have tried their own ways to deal with it, but you know, now possibly, you know, they want to let someone know about it and see what can be done to actually help lah. Yeah. So sometimes, you know, we have had family members as well who tell us that, you know, we want to just give up on them, you know, because sometimes you are there journeying with them, and then eventually some of these survivors may go back, let's say, to the abuser, or you know, or decide, you know, they don't want your help anymore. And I think we need to understand again, right, what we've shared before about the cycle of violence, that there are times that will be good, right? And during these times, the survivor may think, okay, maybe the problem isn't that big anymore. Maybe I don't really need that help. So as helpers, or, you know, as people who are there concerned about them, you might be giving up on them, right, during this time, because you feel like, hey, I've helped you so much, you know, and then here you are, you know, just going back to this person. But always remember that, you know, person who's going through violence would have to consider a lot of things before they feel safe enough, before they feel ready to take the next step. So sometimes if you feel that this you may need some support, it might be good to suggest for them to seek help from professionals. Yeah, so that, you know, they have really that platform to be talking about their issues, which may not sometimes be very easy for someone, like a friend or a family member to actually hold. Yeah, and especially so if you suspect that they are in danger, like their situation is really rife, then this is where there is a need to call the police for immediate action, so that they can help. One of the things, and especially so I want to bring this up about the elderly, because our experience of just now what we talked about, the vulnerable groups of people, most times by the time the elderly comes to us, it's usually when things have gotten worse. Yeah, I still remember there was this client that actually came with bruises on her eyes. She was punched in the eye by her son, and then he also stepped on her, so she had bruises on the thighs as well. And by the time she came to us, that was a few days after she was discharged from the hospital, but the bruises still, looked very much fresh. And she was also still in a state of fear, although she had already moved out from the house. And it was not, and I think in that situation, it's really banking on people who are around them, because for a lot of these elderly, they may not actually be as visible as many other people out there. Say for example, like children, right? Because you see children in school, but you don't see the elderly. So a lot of times, we are really hoping for people like yourselves, out there, who may hear, who may know about the situations, to alert the police, or alert, the social service agencies, so that help can be rendered faster. And from what we know, the earlier help can be given to these families, the better there are these opportunities for us to intervene and help before things actually get worse. Yeah, so it's really important that while we exercise this sensitivity, we also know about our limitations, that sometimes we really can't deal with this ourselves. We might need support. So similarly for us professionals as well, we don't always just work on our own. So like what Dharma says, how we also work closely with the courts, we work with the police, we work with the medical professionals, even the informal support like your grassroots leaders, neighbors and family members, so that we can actually help these families better.
Thank you, Auntie Siti. Actually, we do have a question from a member of the audience, and the question is, can teachers or neighbors apply for PPOs on behalf of children? I think this one, Dharma, I'll let you take the question.
I think it's important that the family members or somebody in the family comes forward to make that application for them. They can, of course, guide them to these places, but it's important because it's still a responsibility of someone who's the guardian of that child. You see, and like what DC says, if there is no such person coming forward, then CPS, Child Protection Service, is the place to call, because they have the statutory powers to help children, because these are vulnerable people who need that kind of help. So it's not that they cannot, but there are other avenues, because then they are committing themselves into this situation, you see. And then if there's a breach of the PPO, the teacher or the neighbor has to step forward. So that's where the problem will be. So it's not that they cannot apply, but it is a very big commitment that they're taking to come forward to do that. Of course they can work with the Child Protective Service to even foster the child or house the child or things like that for the time being, or be the extra pair of eyes in that environment, to pay attention, because these are important things. I think when it comes to abuse, the nation is trying to make a move towards collaborative approach. Different stakeholders are trying to come together. We're a first world nation. We're working towards that kind of awareness, networking, and all that. And I think everybody's role is very important here. Everybody has to come forward. I mean, I'm heartened by that question, because it's somebody who actually feels that they need to come forward, and that's good, because and I think that's what this kind of awareness, where we start hoping that this is not my problem, I better not get involved. This kind of a mindset has to stop, so that we can help people. Yeah.
And what about partners or non-family members, assuming there is cohabitation?
Okay. I mean, the courts can. I'm assuming the question is whether
Are
They can be
partners or
protected
non-family members apply for PPOs or DEOs?
for themselves or for people in the house, is it? Okay, I guess they
Mm,
can, but like there's sometimes ex-spouses or ex-boyfriends who stalk them at work,
correct.
keep calling them at the office place and all that. This is all continual harassment that falls under family violence. You see,
Yes.
so definitely they can make that application. But if it's unrelated people, there is the POHA, the Protection from Harassment in the state courts. So there's also another place there that they can make that application. But for they don't necessarily have the extra tools about counseling and all that, because here they once they understand this is a family unit and there are parties that have to learn to live together at some point, right? We're not
Yeah.
trying to estrange them. Children cannot divorce their parents, or parents cannot relinquish their relationship with their children so easily. So these are all relationships that need to continue surviving the violence. So what kind of support can we give so that these underlying problems are addressed and getting better? So these supports are definitely available at family court, and
Yeah.
and
Thank you,
because our
Natalie.
social workers are all working towards it. Sorry.
I think it's sorry. Yeah, Christine, I also want to just add on to Dharma about, the question about the teachers, right? Just now, who can they actually apply or not? Actually, so for some of us, for some of the social workers, we are actually appointed, to apply on behalf of children who may not be able to apply for themselves as well. So there are social service practitioners across the Singapore, right, who can actually apply. So this really, again, the first persons that we'll usually go to, again, like what Dharma says, in the networks, who can actually just be there, the guardian, who can actually continue to keep them safe. But
Correct.
sometimes there are situations where really, there isn't anyone, and maybe even in situations where we see that the protective parent or the only parent that's there may be too either afraid to apply, because he or she may also be going through the violence, and they have their own concerns about their own safety. And so we would make that assessment and be able to apply on behalf of those under 21 years old.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Adisti. All right, I think we can move on now to where our focus will be on helping perpetrators. So we are considering the other end of the spectrum. How can we help perpetrators get the help they need to prevent escalation or recurrence of family violence? Perhaps we can hear from Adisti first. What is your experience working with PAVE shown you in terms of helping families through such issues?
Yeah, so I think, like what we mentioned earlier, the perpetrators are really important people that we need to work with, because, again, their hands, their legs, their mouth belongs to them, right? So they are the one who actually needs to stop the violence. And essentially, that will help to keep all of us safe, and keep those families safe as well. And over at PAVE, one of the things that we do is that we don't actually see, let's say, for example, a couple, okay, so the husband abuses the wife, for example, we don't see both of them in the same room at the same time, okay, because I think here the key consideration is actually safety. Yeah, so it may not necessarily be helpful, and even can be very dangerous, okay, if we put the perpetrator and the survivor in the same room together, because the survivor will not feel safe enough to be sharing on anything. And even so, right, when they leave, let's say they come to PAVE, and then by the time they leave PAVE, we cannot guarantee what happens after that, right? So we do see them separately, and how we usually share with the families is that, take this as a platform, right? For them to have their own platform to deal with their own issues, right? So for the perpetrators, sometimes just having that space and time to just talk about some of the struggles or some of the difficulties, which doesn't justify the use of violence, but it also enables us to know more, to hear more from them about what's really happening. So sometimes that really help, because when we engage them, this is where they begin to gain insight, gain awareness, to see how their behaviors have really impacted on their loved ones. Yeah, and so it starts that process of change lah, towards something that's better. And also I think not just supporting the perpetrators and also the survivors, but there could also be other family members who may be affected by the violence. So sometimes they may not be direct victims of abuse, but they are exposed to the violence. They hear, they see, they know. Sometimes, parents would say that maybe my kids don't know, because they are sleeping each time when a violent incident happens. But when we speak with the kids, they can tell us everything that
Yeah.
happens, right? Because how do children learn about the violent incidents right now, and they themselves may be very traumatized by some of these things, and parents sometimes are very surprised or shocked when they learn, right, that the kids know a lot, and the kids are very much affected by what they know happening in the household. And so we help them as well, to heal from these experiences of violence. And even when the violence is over, so the work doesn't quite stop there, because when necessary, we also work with the families to repair the relationship if necessary, right? So be it marital, parental, familial relationship. Because if you consider, I mean, if you think about it, right, for some families, like they will ask questions like, for example, like, how do I restore my trust, in my husband, for example, because he had hurt me all this while. Now he has stopped his violence, and he's expecting that I would, just continue from this point on and love him and pretend like, nothing has happened. That couldn't be it lah, right? And then for some of them, all this while I've been relating to my family, I've instilled fear in my family, right? They're all scared of me, but now I don't know. I don't know how to relate to, to my kids, or to my wife, or to my parents without using violence. So I need to unlearn and relearn some of these things, and it becomes very important also for families, as they pick up the pieces and move forward from there. And potentially this could also be something to strengthen that family relationship. I think recognizing that while things are not the same anymore, but there still could be potential of change for the better.
Thank you, Adisti.
Yeah.
Damron, would you like to add before we move to the Q&A?
Sure. I just want to add, at this point, I mean, part of finding that kind of help is to make sure that the people who can help are also available. So at this point, I just want to say that I really appreciate men who come forward to be social workers, and take their jobs very seriously, because there are many men, clients of mine, who have been very well helped by male social workers, because it's easier to talk to them, because they may come from backgrounds where they don't have strong male role models, you see. So even male lawyers, family lawyers, have helped help men understand that their behavior is right or wrong. And I don't mean to say only men are perpetrators. I'm just saying, for example, and our family judiciary has a lot of male judges now, who balance the way things are seen. So many people think family court, women's charter, men have no voice. If I've done something wrong, they sort of cower there and come. No, the support is multi-pronged. It sees the family as people differently. A man has, they also get the kind of support and help from that place as well. And perpetrators, like sometimes women who see elements of their husband in their son, and then they take out a lot of their frustration on the child. Don't be like your father and things. So sometimes coming forward and talking. Lawyers also, we talk to them. We says, listen, just because your husband displays this and you see elements of that, everybody you see is like your husband. So don't do that. Talking to them and helping them understand that your child can evolve to be someone else. I know he looks like your husband. It's not going to become your husband. So, even that kind of pattern of behavior, sometimes it's good to just, if you notice it, help talk to the people in front of you and all that. But definitely social workers play such an important role in helping them role model. And at the same time, I just want to say, like, I have a particular client who used to abuse his wife and all, and he's very nice. He's now a social worker, and I have other male clients sometimes, and I do send them to him to have a chat. So he talks about how he has damaged a lot of the relationships in his own life because of his own problems and the way he's taken out his temperament, his emotions and all that. And sometimes it's good to hear that there is room for recovery. You can actually evolve to be a better person, and things can happen. You can even use that experiences you've had to help other people overcome the challenges that they are facing in their own homes. Yeah.
It's
I think
thank you
that
for sharing that. It helps inspire hope, right, for those in the audience, because most of the time people are very dejected, or they feel that it's something that's impossible to overcome because it's a family and dynamics are difficult. And
a PPO is not a death sentence. It's just a wake-up call to say, hey, someone is feeling scared about your behavior. So if you change your behavior, you can revoke the PPO. I mean, it's just a wake-up call. That's all.
And I just want to touch the point about men helping men, because over at PAVE, one of the things that we have done and also do very often, and we see a lot of good that comes out of it, is really the group work for men. So men for men, basically, right? And what we call like the men's group. So sometimes when we think about it, this is something that's very shameful, right, for them to actually be coming together and be talking about their experiences. So this group work, one of the things that we say is also to affirm them on their courage, right, to be really stepping up and say that I have like really literally man up lah, to say that I have done, I've used violence, I'm not proud of it. So you can see that the first sessions they will be like I'm not very comfortable here and things like that. But again, the learning, the role modeling, the sharing of the struggles, and knowing what can help for them, because essentially in a group setting, when they leave pay, for example, and when the session ends, this becomes that support group, because it's not easy, especially so for men. And I'm just saying this as an example also, because we've had experience like this. It's not so easy for us to just, for them to just pick up the phone call and say, I need help. But this is a group of people who they've already developed, the vocabulary for, things like respect, things like, what's my self-control, how do I put it into action, what are some of my struggles. I can just pick up a phone call, of the phone, and just make a call to one of my fellow participants in this group session, and then get that support, talk through with this person, and essentially that becomes another support in his system that can help to also continually encourage this person to be on the path of change. So we really like that, the self-help element of the support that they can get in the community as well.
Thank you, Adjesti. I think we can move into the Q&A now. So I'll be shooting you questions. Given the time, it's grateful if you could say yes, no, and then brief explanation so that we can address as many concerns as we can. All right, first one for you, Dharma. If someone who has a PPO, does it go on a criminal record, and does it need to be declared in a job application, for example?
No, it's a very personal protection order. I mean, it's a personal protection order. It's just an order telling you to not commit violence. It's just recognize that you are capable of harming someone, and then it doesn't go on your criminal record or anything. It's not only if you breach it, it's a quasi-criminal offense. Quasi-criminal because there's a pastoral element to this crime, right? Because there's the counseling and all that. So it's ultimately a family court, and the family court takes a very therapeutic uh, um, role in addressing these kind of problems. It doesn't just, it's very slow to fine or to jail someone when such problems happen. They do only if there's a breach of the order, then you have to worry. But no, other than that, it's not in your criminal record, and you don't have to declare it. Like I said, if it is of no use after a certain time, you can definitely make an application to rescind or revoke the PPO in court.
Thank you.
Apply to court to say you don't need it anymore. Yeah.
And if a perpetrator has diagnosed mental health issues or suspected mental health issues, can someone still go ahead to apply for a PPO?
Yes. Yeah, they can. But it's the help that perpetrator needs, you see, that's more important. Because if that person has a mental health issue and they are not able to represent themselves, they have unsound mind, then it's hard because then they cannot represent themselves in court. So PPO may not be the correct thing. But we're talking about, say, a manageable mental issue where they are supposed to take the medication so that they don't do these kind of things. Then that's different. You see? Do you understand what I mean? So if they're unsound mind and they're just flailing their arms and hitting you, then of course a PPO is not the solution to this problem. Yeah, because they're not aware of what they're doing. You see, so there's no intent. They don't even know what they're doing is hurting you. Even if you're crying in front of them, they don't get it because that kind of mental issue is very strong. So it's a different kind of help that they need. Yeah.
Thank you, Adisti. A member of the audience says she has difficulties trusting the spouse again after abuse, and is asking what can be done to allow her or him supposed to heal after the abuse. What would you recommend?
I think, that is fairly much a normal experience. I think we acknowledge that as well. It's never easy, and that's why one of the things that we usually share with our clients, that things may not be the same again, right? Even when the violence has been dealt with and things are safe and things are better now. Yeah. So of course, when it comes to how to restore it may take time, right? I think the recognition that everyone is different and everyone experiences it differently, depending on how much of hurt that this person has actually gone through. I think this is fairly on an individual basis as well, that when we work with them. So again, it's not just straight away going into kind of like a post-violence work. So sometimes there needs to be some time for us to process what's really the impact, even on the survivor himself or herself. Yeah, because sometimes they may themselves not be wary of the other effects, right? Not just about the trust bit, but many other things. Even like what Dharma says, that it could also even be trauma, right? That they need to kind of like deal with before they're ready to do that repair work again. For some couples, there is also that recognition that maybe things can never be the same again and they can never actually repair, and that's fine, right? Because I think, again, this is the experiences of each and everyone, and they may have to make certain decisions about themselves after the violence is over. So usually when we also work with the perpetrators, one of the things that we always set in terms of expectations is that just because that you are in the counseling program doesn't mean that your family is going to accept you, or you are going to get like complete, like, say, forgiveness, or things will just be like the way it was before. So there needs to be that expectation that if he or she is going to change, then he or she is going to change for himself or herself. Yeah, not with the expectation that someone out there is going to accept me or not. Yeah, so I think we work with families on that and manage their expectations of change as well.
Thank you, Adisti. Dharma, we have questions about the legal process. What happens when a perpetrator defaults on the mandatory counseling order? That's the first one. And the second one is, are there any other options to help victims if they are uncomfortable meeting their perpetrators? I think the context of this question is, if parties are ordered to go for mandatory counselling, then they may have to sit in the same room as the perpetrators. And then, as Adisti shared, they will feel inhibited, and it's going to be difficult for them to speak.
No,
without...
I think, yeah. Sorry. The counselors actually don't meet them together. They do go separately to their houses. They do make the time to go and see them separately, and to see whether there is a way they can bring them together. But sometimes people just tell you a flat out no. I don't want to see him anymore. I don't want, it could be a sibling relationship and they don't want to. And at that point, as long as the violence has stopped, the review in court is to see that the violence is not going to take place anymore. Of course, sometimes the relationship is damaged to a point where you've brought me to court lah. I'm never going to forgive you, So, but in a way, both parties are okay with it as long as I don't have to see him and he's not going to hurt me. And the other party is sort of ashamed of what they've done, but they don't want to come forward anymore. So, if they default on it, the court doesn't force them. The court will send them another notice that you should. But should you tomorrow breach the order, they will look at the fact that you didn't attend. That all these can affect the court in making its judgment. So it's good to go because it's free. It's part of the system. It's not something you're paying for, and it's something that the court wants to do as a service to help people unpack the problems that they have. Having said that, coming back to one of the earlier questions, we have cases where the violence has been so great that the police and all have come in and it's like an assault case. At that time, the family member does take a PPO. Now that case that's going on in court will leave a criminal record because it's an assault case. At the end of the day, there were witnesses, neighbors, and all came forward. But the PPO is something that you are just taking for your own protection so that that person won't do it again. So if it's a very severe case of violence, then definitely there will be the police and they will come forward and charge, like, say that they used a weapon to hurt somebody in the house with a knife, or beat them up till they fractured themselves, ambulance had to come. Then definitely there will be a different charge there that will be done in the criminal court. But a PPO is here for you to just take out to say, hey, I don't want you to touch me anymore. I don't want you to hurt me anymore because I'm in such shape. So it's different. So that one, yeah, that will leave a police record, or
And what
and
about
also just to add on, Christine, sorry about that. I just want to add on also to what Dharma says about, the PPO. If let's say a person doesn't come, for us social workers, one of the things that we can do also is to flag up to the courts, because there is a review for
Yes.
the counselling order that's actually given. So if they have not been attending, or they have been defaulting and things like that, this is something that the courts will also tell them to go for. So it is already in the system, but that also acts as one of which they get reminded to actually go if they are not doing so.
Thank
They
you.
will try to
And
call them as much as possible. Sorry,
It's okay. Questions about the DO, domestic exclusion order. Can it be filed against a house owner? So if a couple shares a flat, can one
definitely.
file? Okay, thank you. And
it's harder. It's harder. I just let you know it's harder because you have to make a very strong case for it, because the court has to be a bit hesitant. You're basically throwing out one of the owners in the house. So there's a certain bar, a certain principle you have to reach. Certain principles of law you have to establish and reach. And sometimes the court will say, why can't you just get a PPO first? Why straight to a DO? And even if you have a PPO, you must show me why, in spite having a PPO, you need a DO. So the DO is, so it's not impossible to get a DO. There are people who've gotten it, but definitely the bar is high. If it's an owner, because where else will he go? But the court is not interested in that. The court wants to know why you want a DO. How is it important for the safety of the people in this house that a DO is given on that person? Yeah.
Thank you. And there is another question on the sequencing. So is it okay to apply for a PPO first, and maybe a couple months later, then you apply for a DEO?
Okay. Normally the incidents have to be within the last couple of months, within the last 6 months. So if it warrants for you to take out both, take out both. Because it's not so much that I want him out of the house. I just don't want him to commit family violence on me as well. So even if he's out of the house and he sees me outside, I don't expect him to come and hurt me. So it may be something that you want to get together. It largely depends on the case facts that are in front, and what kind of a scenario that this person is. So if it's an elderly person, definitely, we have had an elderly mom with a young son, and the young son is quite violent. Makes it very difficult for the mom to live in that house. Both are co-owners, and mother had to take out a PPO and a DO, and she succeeded because the court looks at her and somebody who needs that kind of safety, and that it's still just two pieces of paper that you are giving to her. And she's an elderly lady. It's not like anything else. She just has to call the police to activate this if the son breaches the order. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think we will have our last question for this evening. What protection is there for foreign women who are family violence victims? They've married Singaporeans, but the victims themselves are not citizens yet. We can hear from the both of you at 30 seconds each.
Okay, I just go first.
Okay. Yeah. So for us, I think for as long as they are residing here in Singapore, the violence
Yes.
happens here as well. We will extend that support for them. Yeah, and especially so in this situation, if there are also children, vulnerable members of the family, we also help them as well.
Yeah. The courts do recognize violence is blind to your nationality. You know what I mean? So the
Exactly.
support that the court gives is blind to all that. So like Adisti says, especially protecting the mom is in the welfare of the children. If the mother is the caretaker of the children, so the courts do step in at this point. So even if you're a foreigner, you will get that support. And there's more and more awareness about this now. There's a family justice support scheme as well for foreign spouses with Singapore children. So even if they don't get the support from Legal Aid Bureau, we have that program with Law Society Pro Bono Office for that kind of support for foreign women. Yeah.
Okay, I think we have to bring our Q&A session to a close. To our audience, I hope that from the sharing by Adisti and Dharma this evening, you have the reassurance that if you need help or if anyone you know needs help, help is available. There is the infrastructure in place and there are support services ready to be tapped upon. And there are people ready to help your family overcome this struggle. This leaves me to thank everyone for your attendance this evening. We're also, of course, grateful to Dharma and Adisti for your time this evening. Please remember to download the useful resources regarding the issues discussed today. It can be found at the Files tab on your screen on the right. After this webinar ends, you will receive a survey. We require your feedback. This will help us make future webinars more relevant and useful to you. Thank you very much, Adisti and Dharma, for spending the evening with us again.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Adisti. Thanks.
On behalf of Law Society Pro Bono Services, we thank everyone for your time this evening. Have a great evening.